Hello and welcome to the third edition of Gutter Fighting Secrets Practical Prepping. What we're going to be going over in this section is home security. I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you guys, but I do it in this way for a specific purpose. I don't believe in wasting a lot of time. I'd rather throw a lot of information your way, have you take notes on what you feel you need to, and be able to walk away with some really solid information at the end rather than wasting time with a whole lot of fluff and nonsense. So, with all that in mind, let's dive right into it. So, with the outside of your home, and this is arguably one of the more important factors here to think about, is lighting. Now, you don't want any dark spots on your property. You ideally want to kind of flood your whole property with a whole shitload of light. Obviously, people will always kind of choose dark areas to lurk around in. You don't want them lurking around in the shadows, fucking around at all, especially when it comes to something like an emergency situation or somewhere where, the cops aren't going to be having the best response time or something like that. But honestly, this goes for everyday life as well. You don't have to light up your whole property with floodlights or some kind of crazy shit like a paranoid fuck, but you really want to be aware of what's going on in your property. And the bigger the property, the more lighting you're going to need. But that's just kind of the way of things. More property, more problems. That's what I say. Now, when we're talking about this lighting, you really ideally want to make sure that it's not running on grid power. You don't want to be dependent on grid power to light your home because obviously, if there's a blackout situation, that's really when you're going to be needing lighting the most. And I'd also advise against relying on a generator to power your outside lighting because generators fail. And they also run out of fuel too. The good thing here is that in the last couple of years, we've kind of gone through a innovation in lighting technology, what with LED and solar power. And there's a lot of really great motion activated sensors and lights and garden lights and stuff you can buy these days. And I would highly recommend them. Depends on what your budget is, but they also make ones that aren't very expensive. And if you get enough of these and strategically place them along your property, you can really do a great job of not only lighting up your property, but making sure that those lights stay on no matter what happens. And also, because they're motion activated, they're not going to be A, wasting a lot of power running all the time, and B, you can kind of see, all right, well, in the northeastern quadrant of my property, something just set that off. So these things are really kick-ass. You can also buy them. They stick right on to the outside of your house, or they can screw in as well. And you can put these, in any location above your doors. So if the power goes off and, the lighting around your doors that usually relies on grid power goes down, you have these as a backup. You can actually switch them off and on and just switch them on if the power goes down, and you've got your lighting all set up. So the more lighting, the better. Not only does it light up stuff, it also casts shadows, so you will be aware of what's going on outside of your house. And while I'm at it, you can also get these for inside your house. Just make sure that either, you stay on top of replacing the batteries, or if they're solar powered, that they get enough sunshine. Or, sometimes they make solar powered ones that also take batteries, which are great. And you can put those inside your house. And again, they're motion censored, so it's 2 in the morning, someone's walking around down there that shouldn't be. All right, at this room, someone's walking around. Let's grab the old 45 and check it on out. I've seen a lot of moonlighting, and that's a great option, but just be aware that a lot of this moonlighting up in the trees and stuff, number one, is expensive, and number two, it relies on grid power. So while you might have a generator, and maybe you're even savvy enough to be able to hook those moonlighting shits up to your generator or whatever, don't rely on it. I would put in little solar lights irregardless, just as a backup, because like I said, when the grid goes down, when the power goes off, that's when you're going to really want lighting more than ever. And you can pick these things up on eBay and, here and there, Home Depots, whatever, for pretty fucking cheap. And I would have to say that they are a solid investment. Now, another thing you can do actually is chem lights or glow sticks. I've actually done this myself, and they're great for lighting up, dark corners inside your home as well as outside your home. Be aware that they usually last maybe 8 hours, 12 hours at the most, depending on what kind of chem light glow stick you get. But they can be very handy, especially if you anticipate getting power back soon. Just lighting up a couple of corners of your house with these chem lights, obviously they're not candles, they're not going to burn anything, they're very safe. Most of them are child safe as well, and they last a fucking long time. So they are good in a pinch. Now, another thing you can do with these chem lights, if you should be so inclined, is you can actually rig them up on your property and rig them to a tripwire. And they actually literally make devices solely dedicated to this. But you can also just do it on the fly. All you got to do really is grab a chem light, tie a string to it, make sure it breaks in the right way if it's tripped, and there you go. As soon as that fucking thing goes off, All right, well, somebody's tripped it. Let's go check it out. And, it's over on the Alpha Bravo corner of my property. I'm going to go take a look. So, another thing we'll touch on is candles. You can't have enough candles, really, whether you get those little tea light candles, whether you get big candles. They make, the emergency candles that'll last for like 5 fucking days. They're all good. Just make sure that you practice solid fire safety. Don't leave candles burning when you're sleeping. Don't leave the room. As a fireman, I can't tell you how many fires I've responded to and put out that have started with fucking candles. So while they are great, they're great for morale. There's something about burning candles that kind of calms people, soothes people. It's just nice, but they are very dangerous. So make sure, number one, that you have a means to put out a fire should one start. And number two, just don't be a fucking ignorant asshole and let your gosh damn house burn down because you're being silly with candles and leaving them too near the drapes or too near anything else. Don't let it catch. Be very careful. But honestly, people have been using candles to light rooms for fucking decades and years and centuries. Also, oil lamps and stuff like that. Just do be aware, be diligent, and be cautious about your fire safety. Now, if you don't want to use candles, or if you don't want to use a lot of candles, you can also get lanterns, battery-powered lanterns, and stuff like that. They're great. You might run out of batteries eventually, but I guess you can also run out of fucking candles eventually too. So there you go. The more lighting that you have inside your house, the better. Just one thing to be aware of, and this goes for everyday life as well. You don't necessarily at night want the light so bright that you can't see out your windows and you can't see if someone's kind of trying to peer in from a little distance away or right outside. You do kind of want them a little more dim, but not too dim that you can't fucking see or, whatever. So that's just kind of a give and take right there. They also make solar powered ones to recharge during the day. That'd be a great option as well. Obviously, fireplaces, if you're lucky enough to have a fireplace or two in your house, definitely make sure you've got a good supply of wood. The nice thing about fires and wood and stuff like that is, just psychologically speaking, people can smell the fireplace and smell the wood going from a while away. So it might actually deter people, like, oh, there's people in this house, I don't want to loot it, especially if you have a dog, and we'll talk more about that. But people don't really want to necessarily have a confrontation. A lot of the times they're just looking to break in and steal what they can while people are out of the house or away, out of town, whatever. So, people smelling a fire going in your fireplace can also be kind of a psychological deterrent there. And it gives off, light, gives off plenty of heat in the wintertime, which is a must. And like I've said in the previous two videos, you can also burn your trash outside or burn stuff outside as well, down tree limbs and stuff like that. Maybe you've got bushes that are too tall, but I jump ahead of myself there. Flashlights, you want at least one or two flashlights for every member of your group, and at least 2 sets of extra batteries per flashlight. Obviously, flashlights are great for seeing in the dark. You really ideally want to get the higher powered ones, something with a nice bright light on it. Flashlights are great not only to blind somebody before you close distance with them or before they can close distance with you, but also obviously seeing in the dark, which brings me into a spotlight. A nice, bright, really high-powered handheld spotlight would be a great idea. One of those marine kinds that's even resistant in the rain and everything, especially if you live in a more rural or wooded environment, but also if you live in a suburban environment. Like we discussed, mag lights can hit people over the head, can also blind them. A spotlight can also blind somebody like hell, but more importantly, if you need to rapidly see what's going on in the woods outside your house, say you do live in a more rural environment, this will go ahead and accomplish that. I would just caution you to get the one that takes battery as well as being able to charge, because you never know when you're not going to be able to charge that mofo. Now, we might as well touch on gen systems right now, being on the topic of lighting and power. Generators are a great idea. The thing about them, though, you have to keep in mind, for security at least, is generators are kind of a high commodity item, and due to the fact that you have to leave them outside, they are prone to being stolen. And especially if there's a lot going on, or if just in your house, a lot of homes are very insulated and just very thick with the walls and even the windows and stuff. So you might not even at first know if your generator gets stolen. So I would tell you, have some extra chains and a lock, thick chains and a thick lock laying around that you can go ahead and bolt down your generator to something outside. Now, another thing to keep in mind with these gen systems is they emit a lot of carbon monoxide. And obviously, being a fireman, especially during these storms that have just happened is what I've seen is people keep these things way too close to their house. Now, I said that a lot of homes are very well insulated and the windows are thick, but still, you're going to have space where air can come in and out of your house. There's a technical term for that, but I forget it offhand. But what happens is this carbon monoxide, especially if it's too close to a window or thin walls or whatever, will travel inside your home. And if you have carbon monoxide detectors, it will set them off. If you don't, it could kill you. So you got to be very cautious not to put these things too close to your home. Obviously, nobody wants to run the cord or the extension cord that far away. They don't want to keep it that far away from their house. But you really should be keeping it far away from your house, as far away as you possibly can. And again, bolt that shit down. Now, another thing with these gen systems is obviously they require fuel. And I'm just going to touch on this. Just, like I said, being a fireman, you can't be too careful. If it's running off gas, whatever kind of fuel it's running off is going to be flammable. So keep it well away from your house and don't store it in your garage. Don't store that fuel in your garage. If you have a shed or something in the backyard, go ahead and keep it in there. If not, just keep it in a location that if they were to catch fire, those fuel cans, that it wouldn't, burn down your whole house or cause too much life threat. Another thing about the garage is don't keep your gen in the garage. I've seen people keep it in the garage when the garage door is open, but again, I would kind of advise against that because you just never know, and you don't want your garage filling up with CO and all that nasty shit. Please just be careful with your generators. Another thing, just on the security aspect of these generators, is that they do cause a lot of attention or attract a lot of attention. Like I said, they're a high commodity item, so something to think about here is if you're in that type of situation where you're prepared and other people aren't, and something's been going on or dragging on a little longer than it should, you don't really want to make yourself a target. So maybe consider running that gen sometimes when you really need it, or putting it back, because it can make you a target. It can go ahead and scream out, the way it's loud and people hear it, and it can go ahead and scream out, look, I've prepared. I more than likely have some food and some water and some supplies and maybe even some firearms laying around. So people, especially, gang members or people who are out there on the prey, are going to realize, look, this guy's got a gen system. Let's take a look and see what else he's got. So just be very cautious of that. Again, I'm going to touch on this real quick, is lighting in your home. So like if you've got the means to power your home, you don't necessarily want to make it look like you've got the means to power your home. So consider investing in some blackout curtains or something like that, or even just throwing up some heavy blankets over your windows and stuff. You don't want to make it look like yours is the only house on the block that's lit up. So definitely think about that. Think about at least investing in some blackout blinds or heavy blankets that you can just throw up, because you don't want to have your loud generator out there going "Durr," and your whole house is lit up, but meanwhile the rest of your block or the rest of where you live is totally blacked out. Not only can it cause undue attention, but it also can cause some resentment from other people who have not prepared. And fuck them, but you just don't really want to cause resentment and cause a lot of attention towards yourself. It is kind of about being the gray man if you can. Now, I'm going to kind of leave it at that with the gen systems. I will probably do a separate video just on generator systems, but it will require me doing a little bit of work because I'm not ultra familiar with them. But I promise I'll research it for you guys and get with some experts that I know, and I'll get back to you about that. Now, moving on to securing your doors and windows. Now, I'll touch on windows first. Something that's a great idea, no matter where you live, is if you can invest in some actual storm shutters. Now, there's a lot of houses out there that have shutters on them, but they're decorative. They don't actually fucking work at all, which I think is the stupidest thing. So check it out. And if yours is the type of house that has decorative storm shutters, maybe go ahead and think about investing in some actual ones, because back in the day, these things were meant for just this. Securing your windows against shit blowing into them, and even people, trying to break your windows and come in. So if you can get a heavy pair of storm shutters and throw those on your windows, that's a great nonchalant way of really going ahead and securing your windows. On top of that, another great nonchalant way is you can get, I believe it's 3mm, I think they make 6, I think they even make an 8mm security window film. And this is stuff, basically, it looks like cellophane or something, but what you do is you just stick it over your windows, and it requires a little bit of work to set it up. And once you put it on, you can't necessarily just take it right off. But this security window film, they call it, it's really great stuff. And what it'll do is if someone, smashes your window with a hammer or something like that, it's not going to shatter, and it's going to kind of like protect it almost a little bit like bulletproof glass. I don't really know if it is bulletproof. I think that if you want to do that, you got to step it up a bit. But this stuff is a really great option, and it's really not very expensive either. So if you were to go ahead and put this, let's say 8mm window shielding, as well as or security film, as well as shutters, actual storm shutters, that would be great, and you would be ahead of the game. Now, another thing you can even do is go out and buy a bunch of 2x4s or something like that, and just have them and have some extra nails and a hammer handy. That way, worst come to worst, you can always board up the inside of your windows, and you don't need to go crazy with it. 3 or 4 boards should do the job. But that's definitely going to deter somebody from, breaking your windows and crawling in. They're definitely going to have to work a lot harder to get into your house if you have your fucking windows boarded up. So, although that's not something you would want to do just every day, it would definitely make you look like a fucking crazy fuck. But in event of a storm, or, concerns of looting or something like that, it's not a bad idea just to have those boards and some nails and a hammer lying around just in case. Just make sure that you counted, I need 3 boards for each window, and make sure you get the thicker ones. So I've got 3 thick boards for each windows. That's this many boards and this many windows. And you can even go ahead, put it in your garage, put it in your attic, whatever, and just have it there for a rainy day, so to speak. Now, securing your doors, door jams are a really great idea, and you can even get, cheap little wooden ones, door stoppers or whatever. You can also get, better metal ones that are a little more reinforced. You can also get ones with alarm systems built into them, meant for like hotel security and stuff like that, which I think are great because you can also use that while you travel. In some of my DVDs, and like I said, these things are great. Now, when it comes to your doors, there's something you want to think about. Now, the deadbolts that we put on our doors, they're usually held in on what's called the strike plate with little itty bitty screws, almost like fucking bullshit decorative screws that don't really do much. And typically, one of the weaker points on your door is going to be the deadbolt. So if someone kicks at it and kicks at it, what happens is those little screws basically just come out, and they're able to kick in your door. But what you can go ahead and do is get big long ones, about 3 inches, and replace those little screws with the big screws, and you're going to screw that actually into the 2x4, into your door frame, and it's going to go all the way in. That way, when they try to kick that, that's not going to be your weak point anymore. Which leads me into door thickness. They might not be able to kick in your door, but if your door itself is very thin or flimsy, then that's going to be your weak point. So, I've seen where people aren't able to kick the deadbolt in, but they go right through the door eventually. So you're going to want to make sure that you invest in a solid door. You can also get like metal plating and put it behind your door, screw that in. But you're much better to get, like, they make special security doors that don't look very menacing but are very tough, and you're not going to kick that shit through. Uh, or you can just get a thick door. And that's great no matter if it's, an emergency situation or just everyday life, because you definitely don't want anybody ever to be able to kick in your door. Also, your door hinges, you're going to want to check those. And if they've got the little screws in them, take them out, replace them with 3-inch screws, and screw that motherfucker into the door frame, into the 2x4, and you're good to go. And if you don't want to replace them all, at least replace the middle one with 1 3-inch screw each. Now, another thing you can do is, obviously I spoke about the boards. You might want to egress through that door or enter through it, so you might not want to board it up. But what you could do is like get some bungees and attach them to some little eyelets, screw those into your door frame, and that kind of makes a nice little makeshift like doorstop, as well as the doorstop would be good. It's all about kind of buying yourself more time, so even if they're able to kick in your door, that's going to give them a little extra what the fuck moments for you to grab whatever you need to grab and defend yourself and your family. Now, speaking about that, you can also put like glasses behind the door. I think we all did it when we were kids, maybe afraid of monsters or something. I know I did. Put soda cans times strings on the door. Something, bells even. Just give you a little more notice when something's opening up that door, so you have that time. It's all about buying yourself those seconds to being able to acclimate yourself and realize what's going on. And those 3, 4, 5 seconds, believe it or not, will make all the difference in the world. You can also buy extra deadbolts and put them in your door. Just make sure when you're putting the strike plates in that you use longer screws, just like the other ones. You can also buy those like security chains and everything. Just, realize that a lot of those are pretty flimsy, but I've seen guys with a lot of different locks and chains on their door. That's kind of taking it too far if you ask me, but what you could do is have some of those lying around, just in your garage or whatever. So if you quickly needed to take a screw gun or a screwdriver and screw in some more stuff, a little extra security, that's not a bad idea. You don't have to live your life like you're a paranoid, but when it comes down to it and you're looking at looters or whatever, if you wanted to add some security to your house at that point, that's not a bad option. Now, speaking about living your life like a paranoid fuck, I mean, depending on where you live, bars on your doors and windows, or like a gate on your door or whatever. Look, I mean, some places it might be necessary. Only thing I'll say, obviously, as a fireman, again, I would kind of recommend against that if you can get away with it, because not only can that keep people out of your house, but it can keep you in your house. Especially like bars on the windows. Look, you can't jump out your window if there's a fire, if there's fucking bars covering it. So just realize that. I've definitely seen it in the past where bars on the windows can really cause a lot of havoc, especially on the fire grounds. You're going to need to start thinking about getting saws involved there. I know there was a story when, firemen got trapped in the basement. They had to wait for the rapid interdiction team to go ahead and saw through those bars. It was a bad situation. So just realize that as well as keeping people out of your house, these contraptions can all keep you in your house as well. Another good tip is just throw a peephole on your front door if you can. It'll help you out. You can also get storm shades, roller shades, those metal ones that roll down. That's not a bad idea because you can roll them back up if you don't want them down. Cameras and even dummy cameras are kind of a great psychological deterrent. And they make them really cheap these days too, so you can rig up a camera system pretty fast and pretty well and pretty cheap. And that's really an outstanding option when it comes to everyday home security. Alarm systems, I think every home should have an alarm system. You definitely want to make sure that it's going to freak out if someone tries to break into your home. Just make sure that when you get the alarm system installed, kind of ask some questions. I know they make them these days that aren't really reliant on grid power. Everything usually kind of runs with a battery backup and stuff like that, and that's what you ideally want. So if you're having, smoke alarms that are hardwired, make sure you've also got smoke alarms that are running off a battery. Likewise with your alarm system, I know they make them these days that are specialized. You can't just cut the wires and stuff like that, and that's really what you want. Another great cheap alarm system is a dog. Now, you may have seen out there on videos like burglars who have caught and clean and then teach people how to keep burglars away will always say the first thing is like a dog, and especially a big dog, and especially a couple big dogs. Nobody wants to fuck with that. But even a little dog is capable of being an alarm system, if nothing else. It will definitely yap and bark if someone gets too close to the house. So dogs are a great makeshift alarm system, and like we said about the cans on the door, and as silly as that is, it definitely does work. And you can also buy, like at Home Depot and hardware stores, little door chimes and stuff that just you can stick on and they run off battery power. And those work well too. And again, to have a couple of those laying around just in case, or even if you want to throw them on your doors, now, it's a solid option because you definitely want to be aware, not only in an emergency situation, but every day when your door is being opened. Now that leads me into like bushes outside the house, right? You don't want, especially next to your front door or your primary point of entry, to have tall bushes that someone could hide in. And then as you're putting in the key in the door and walking in, they jump out, and they get you, home invasion style. So you definitely want to make sure that either A, you trim those down, or B, remove them, or C, another good option is to have them be really thorny fucking bushes so nobody's going to need or want to hide in there. Another thing you could do with those thorny bushes is put them under your windows, whether you just plant them in the ground or you can even have them in window boxes, and nobody's going to really want to fucking climb over a bunch of thorny fucking bushes to get inside your window. Or maybe they will, but your average burglar is going to say, fuck, maybe I'll hit the next house. So plants and stuff, anything that someone could really hide in, you either want to A, illuminate the shit out of it, or B, think about trimming it up and thinning it out, because like I said, something where somebody could hide whether it's whatever it is, but especially bushes and stuff like that, especially if it's dark, you want to go ahead and take care of that and nullify that ASAP. Another thing to think about with these bushes and stuff like that is we all like our privacy, but if you've got them like blocking the view directly to your front door or something like that, that might not be great either, because it definitely gives the criminals the opportunity and the psychological advantage to go ahead and kick in your door without thinking anybody's going to really notice, or try to break in or something like that. So a lot of people will leave outside of their door, under their doormat, a fucking key, which is the stupidest fucking thing you could do. If you're going to go ahead and leave a key somewhere in case you get locked out, I understand, but either put it like well away from your house inside a fake rock, or maybe, some people put it under their car in a little magnetized box. Um, just make sure that you hide it. Some people even, bury it somewhere and they know exactly where it is. They put a rock to identify where. So there's ways of doing it, but don't fucking leave it under your front doormat or like above your door frame or anything like that, because everybody knows about that. Another thing is like garage doors typically aren't well secured, and they say typically people going out, whatever primary point of ingress and egress, they will kind of leave the least secured for whatever reason. So that's something to think about. Like if you always go out the side door, remember to lock that fucking side door. Don't be lazy. Everybody knows about this type of thing, especially burglars. Now, another kind of psychological deterrent that you can go ahead and utilize is signs. Now, signs like beware of dog, or no trespassing, or beware, keep off property, private property, stuff like that. It's just a psychological deterrent, and it's almost kind of a bluff. So even if you don't have an angry dog running around, you can go ahead and throw up a sign that says, beware of dog. You can get signs that say under 24-hour surveillance, property under 24-hour video surveillance, audio surveillance. Even if it's not, people aren't going to really typically bother that much to check the whole property. I mean, that's just going to draw a lot of attention to them. And again, it just gives people more of a psychological deterrent, like, oh shit, this guy thought about his security. Maybe if I go any further, I might get shot, or maybe there's someone watching me. I better mind my manners, or maybe there's an angry dogs on this property. I don't want to get bit. So those signs, believe it or not, can actually really help out in deterring crime, theft, and stuff like that. Now, continuing on with psychological deterrents, gates and fences are a psychological deterrent, and it just tells people subconsciously, like, hey, don't come through here, and they physically have to open a gate or a fence to get through into your property, and that just, for whatever reason, kind of adds one more step that they have to take to get through, and also, legally speaking, perhaps can be another step that they have to take to get through onto your property. So it's not like, oh, I just wandered on it, I didn't really know I was on the property. No, you actually went through a door, went through a fence or a gate, and went on the property. And if you like, you can go ahead and install like a 6-foot fence. Personally, I'd like to install a 6-foot fence that's maybe like more of a chain link or see-through type of thing, because a lot of burglars and stuff will kind of use that as cover. People can't see what they're doing behind it, so we all like our privacy, but something that's more see-through but still a fence would be a very solid option. Also, gates. Most gates are kind of like waist high, but if you were to add something that's even taller and matches the other fence, that would be a great option there. You can lock it up and stuff like that. Another good option about having fences and gates is you can also secure it even further should you need to. I mean, you could even go as far as to have barbed or razor wire, hanging out in your garage or something, and throw it up should you need to. Just make sure that you have the special gloves to handle it. Another thing people do, and you'll see this overseas, like in the Middle East a lot, is people have, walls, tall walls, and they'll throw broken glass on top of it. Makes it a lot harder for people to, climb on top with their hands and scale that wall. What you could also do is like dig a trench at the bottom of your fence or whatever. You could also plant thorny ass bushes at the bottom of your fence. People aren't going to want to jump right over into a big thorny ass rose bush. That's definitely a lot more nonchalant than fucking razor wire or digging moats and trenches and shit. Just make sure that those thorny bushes are, no more than like waist high. You don't want people to be able to use those as cover either. Now, securing your driveway or the entrance to your house, I mean, like we said, gates are great. A lot of gates, people can crash through with a car, obviously, but what I actually heard, and I got this one from Southern Prepper-1, is that you can take trash cans and fill them with like sand or rocks or whatever, and stick them up at your the front of your driveway there, and people can't necessarily ram through that as easily. I mean, gates are definitely a great psychological deterrent, but if you're really looking to keep vehicles out of your driveway, you can do that. You can also just put big rocks up or whatever, or nails or something like that. Also, just using your vehicle as a barrier, you can either park it sideways or you can park it right up front so people can't pull in easily. Just be aware that then you won't be able to get out, especially if someone barricades your vehicle in, or if you have a bunch of rocks or trash cans sitting out there, then you're not going to be able to easily pull out. Maybe you want to pull out on the grass or something like that. Now, another thing you can do is like gravel driveways are great because when somebody does pull up, or even if they just walk up, you can hear them. And like I said about the pulling out on the grass, just be aware that if you have grass or whatever and no fence, no gate, someone can also just pull up on your grass. So it doesn't have to be that they pull up on the driveway. A lot of people don't necessarily think about that. You can also obviously get spike strips like the police use. Those can be pretty handy because you can simply just put them down and then yank them back up when you're done using them. All right, now this is getting a little long, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up part 1 of Practical Prepping Home Security, but I am going to be making a part 2 of this, so I will see you then. Thanks for watching. Until next time, please remember that you are your first and last line of defense.